Eles foram retirados da obscuridade e transformados na mais perfeita boy band. Inicialmente, eles foram protegidos dos tabloides e dos escândalos, dando a impressão de que nada podia dar errado.
They were an absolute phenomenon. They were as big as we've seen since the Beatles. It was pandemonium.
Tutoriados para lidar com a mídia, eles eram adorados pelos tabloides e venerados pelos fãs.
They didn't just look like kind of pretty boys that you get into these other boy bands, you know. They all had a very distinct personality.
There would be screaming crowds of young girls throwing their knickers in the air at them. It was that big.
Foi quando um dos membros se libertou e acabou com o sonho.
We weren't quite ready for Take That to end yet. We loved them and we wanted to see them go on and go on.
Uma briga atiçada pela mídia. 10 anos depois, eles ressurgem mais determinados do que nunca a fazer sucesso.
The band has never done this before. Come back 10 years later, a lot older, a lot wiser, a lot more shrewd, but actually even more in touch with their fans and the media than ever.
Take That está exposto. Várias músicas no topo das paradas, eles dominaram o começo dos anos 90. Eles eram muito bem controlados e administrados, o que levou ao fim da banda. Exposed vai mostrar as rivalidades que fizeram manchete e uma das grandes voltas na história da música pop.
Take That's comeback has been phenomenal and totally beyond expectation. No one had any idea that Take That were going to be this big.
Era abril de 2006, uma década depois da banda se separar. Agora, aos 30 e poucos anos, os rapazes estavam juntos novamente, nervosos, preparando-se para a turnê de reunião e imaginando se tudo iria dar certo.
That's the thing I think that they worried about, and I'm sure that every band like that worries about. They'll make their comeback and they will look pathetic.
It's always a bit embarrassing if a band splits up and then you see them kind of all try solo careers, doesn't work out, they do a bit of panto and then they've got back together out of desperation.
I don't think that any bands should be successful after breaking up in that kind of ways. I mean, it's a cringeability factor for me. I thought Take That were quite talented, but they had their day.
Is anybody going to come? You know, obviously we've seen
enough.
Yeah, can we do it? Can we put a show on that is worthy of what we did in the past?
O medo dos garotos tinha fundamento, e com as expectativas dos fãs aumentando e os tabloides prontos para dar o pulo, eles tinham muito a provar.
The first night of Take That's comeback tour up in Newcastle was an incredible night. Lots of women who were sort of 30-something had dressed up for the event. In fact, most people in the stadium were wearing Take That t-shirts and everyone was very excited. I got to interview the band very quickly before they went on stage and they did seem genuinely nervous, and it was very touching to see that even though they'd had all these hits, that they were actually a little bit scared of going out there again.
I don't think even they realised just how popular they were. I think maybe they forgot that, you know, that they were just so huge in the early 90s, or if they remembered that they thought they wouldn't be able to recapture that.
Nobody really expected them to come back, and not just doing it in a half-baked effort, but really putting their all into it.
We got to a point now where they're actually bigger than they were when Robbie was there, which is quite incredible, really.
Depois de 10 anos longe dos holofotes, a volta de Take That aos palcos tinha que ser espetacular. Mais velhos, eles tinham que lutar contra o estigma de ser uma boy band e precisavam de uma nova imagem para convencer a imprensa a levá-los a sério.
The new image is one of maturity. I don't get that. I don't think they can be mature. I still think you'll Take That as Take That. They do have a place, but it's a place of yesteryear.
I think the new groom Take That are kind of like the answer to the yummy mummies. They're the yummy daddies. They look fantastic. They're, you know, yes, they're older, they've got a few wrinkles, but I think they carry it very well. I like the fact that they've signed up to Marks and Spencer's to do an advertising campaign. You know, it's nothing too cool, it's nothing too pretentious. It's just, you know, nice dad wear.
And Take That, I think, have managed really to rescue from the ashes of the first Take That, a rejuvenated Take That, and I think that they are now pretty much fully restored.
Mas havia algo faltando no novo Take That, e dúvidas surgiram sobre o sucesso da volta deles com a ausência do quinto membro, Robbie Williams. A presença de Robbie nos tabloides nos últimos 10 anos lhe rendeu muitos pontos. E apesar de saber que os fãs iriam gostar de ver todos os 5 reunidos, eles temiam que a presença de Robbie deixaria os outros nas sombras.
Clearly the fans would have loved it to have been the original 5. But I don't know that the 4 boys would have necessarily wanted Robbie stealing all the limelight.
Because Robbie was such a big part of the group. I mean, he was the favourite. It was him and Mark. That was it. With people sort of liking Jason and Howard, and then nobody ever really fancied chubby Garry. I think that they probably thought that they couldn't recreate it, but they were going to have a bash. And then when they did their shows, I mean, it was like, you know, Robbie who?
Mas Robbie não tinha o hábito de manter-se em silêncio. A banda tinha conseguido muita publicidade adicionando 19 datas extras à turnê. E em fevereiro de 2007, eles foram nomeados para um prêmio Brit. Robbie estava fora pela primeira vez em anos. E ele rapidamente se retirou de cena, internando-se em uma clínica de reabilitação.
I'm not entirely sure that Robbie going into rehab wasn't a publicity stunt of some kind. He went into a place which was quiet where nobody could get hold of him, just as his old bandmates were reforming and appearing on every front page everywhere.
I'm sure a tinge of jealousy because at the time when they were being so well received, his last album was in the toilet.
Depois de 10 anos de sucesso em sua carreira solo, parecia que Robbie Williams teria que viver na sombra do Take That outra vez. A seguir, a perfeita boy band faz os fãs ficarem loucos.
When these kids get frenzied up, you don't know what they're going to do, and the first thing they're going to do is going to try and rip you apart. They want a piece of you.
E os tabloides explodem quando 5 viram 4.
He was the corporate junkie who jumped out the window. That's what Robbie Williams was in real terms.
Eles foram a boy band preparada para enfrentar o estrelato e ensinada a fazer o jogo da mídia. 4 rapazes comuns. Será que eles estavam preparados para a fama que estava por vir? Quando Take That estava no começo, a Inglaterra estava passando por uma mudança cultural. O começo dos anos 90 foram tempos difíceis e o país precisava de algo para alegrá-lo.
This was when John Major was Prime Minister. It was a drab and grey world we were living in, right? It was the last days of Tory rule. There was a recession going on, right? The only interesting thing you could do as a teenager was watch Neighbours twice a day. Not just the first one at lunchtime. You'd watch the repeat at 5:30. You were that bored. There was no internet. There was no PlayStation 3. It was the most boring place in the whole world. And the only glimmer of light in culture in the early 90s for any of us was Take That prancing about in silly hats on top of the pops.
They were the opposite of everything else that was going on in the music scene. They were happy, they were jumping around on stage. They weren't taking themselves that seriously. It was the perfect thing for those teenagers sitting at home who needed something like that and weren't ready to go through the kind of gothic slit in your wrist phase yet.
There was a very good tradition in rock and roll behaviour, going right back to the Stones in the 1960s, that said that rock and rollers should be badly behaved. And along comes Take That, and they break with that tradition and say, well, we're not going to be badly behaved. In fact, we're going to be the perfect guys that you, as a mother, would want to see your daughter bring home.
Take That foi formado em 1990 por um empreendedor de Manchester, Nigel Martin Smith, ao redor de um jovem cantor de 19 anos, Garry Barlow. Garry estava na agência de Nigel como centro de uma nova banda que ele queria formar. Logo, Jason, um dançarino de 20 anos, se juntou a ele, além de 2 modelos que já estavam na agência, Mark, de 18 anos, e Howard, de 22 anos. Finalmente, um jovem de 16 anos, Robbie, completou o grupo.
It was almost as if they were put together in a software package, someone just sort of contrived to produce a band that appealed to everybody.
I think the fact that the boys were from the Northwest was a key factor, really, for Take That. The fact that they were kind of grounded lads from grounded family backgrounds. Robbie Williams, I don't think, had even had a job before he started in Take That. I think Howard painted cars. Garry, he'd toured the social clubs of the Northwest, and that had given him his grounding. And I think Mark Owen worked in a bank. And these were ordinary lads put together and groomed to become the answer to New Kids on the Block, really.
New Kids on the Block was beyond successful in the United States. They were like a phenomenon. in America. And I think Nigel Martin Smith was looking at that and thinking, you know, we can do that here in Britain. And many would argue they ended up ultimately doing it even better with the formation of Take That.
Their record company were about to drop them, and then someone had the idea of making them tour non-stop to schools, and they played gigs at schools, which is a really clever idea, because I think they gave singles out at school, so every single kid who'd seen it, I mean, you remember what Assembly was like at primary school? It was like miserable, right? Then one day, 5 geezers turn up, dancing to a disco song with a glitter ball hung from the ceiling. You're like, this is like the best band I've ever seen.
Nigel Martin Smith tinha um instinto aguçado para saber o que o público queria. Take That dava uma cara nova aos inúmeros shows de dança que apareciam na televisão.
You can see, even from the early days when I first saw them, you know, turning up and going live on Saturday mornings, that they were all funny and charming and charismatic and down to earth.
You know, you get an immediate reaction. It's great for us to perform our songs in front of an audience, you know. I mean, when we do an album, you're not getting that immediate reaction, and the fans aren't getting it like straight from our mouths.
And that is what people like, especially the tabloid press. That's usually their main criteria. They'll destroy people who they think get too big for their boots, and that's something that Take That never really seemed to do.
I think Martin Smith realised at an early stage that the media were going to be all-powerful, and so he instructed, perhaps even ordered Take That, to imprint themselves on the media, not just shake their hands, but say, I'm Robbie Williams of Take That. You got that? Take that. Now, the media might have thought, oh, God, these Pains, you know, they're such self-publicists, but it worked.
Ele sabia que Take That tinha potencial se o marketing fosse feito corretamente. Por isso, ele investiu mais de 100 mil libras do seu próprio dinheiro e os ensinou a lidar com a mídia.
The way he nurtured this band from very early on, toured them around the country in his own car, got all the newspapers on board very early on, and marketed the band to gay clubs was absolutely exceptional.
Said to the boys and to everyone else, you know, you go into a room, you shake the press by the hand, and you make sure they remember you, and if they don't remember you, you go back and do it again. And as a journalist, that's absolutely right. It pays well to be nice.
And for a while in the early 90s, of course, it did seem inescapable. You know, Take That was everywhere. You know, every time you opened a magazine, switched on TV. And that, I think, Martin Smith realised was important to the success of the band.
I met Nigel quite a lot when I was working at Smash Hits, and Nigel was this kind of like headmaster figure in Take That's life, and in our life to a certain extent, where we would ask for some access and he'd say no. We'd ask for some time to take photos, he'd say no. And the kind of no's that we got back for kind of interviews with the boys, as he called them, were similar to the no's that they were getting, as in, no, you can't have girlfriends, no, you can't stay in the bar after a gig until 3 in the morning, no, you need to do your vocal training, no, you need to do that, no, you need to do this.
I love the idea of Nigel Martin Smith sort of sitting in an office, maybe stroking a little dog, grooming his boys. And I think when you talk to Take That men, as they now are, they'll tell you that, you know, he was probably a little bit in love with all of them.
I think he took it to, you know, a pretty advanced stage, the whole kind of discipline, kind of hard work ethos. But, you know, there was a very good reason that they were successful in those early days. The talent, of course, but also the hours they put in. I mean, in the early days, they were doing 4 gigs a day. And, you know, he's a big part of that. He was the one who helped instill that kind of work ethic in them.
Os garotos trabalhavam sem parar com Nigel e eram treinados rigorosamente. O trabalho duro finalmente deu resultado e a banda chamou a atenção do executivo da BMG, Nick Raymond, que assinou Take That em setembro de 91. Foi uma decisão arriscada da BMG, já que Take That era visto como uma piada na indústria por causa da música pop e da imagem de Mauricinho. Mas não demorou muito e as adolescentes aderiram à marca.
For a long time, they were in the pop wilderness. It was a long time before they had a hit record. Garry Barlow, in the beginning, was seen as the natural choice as a songwriter. He put forward his work to Nigel Martin Smith, who was surprised by how good it was. But all of the music was a bit of a flop. It was only when they released the Tavares cover, It Only Takes a Minute, that Take That started on the journey of success that wasn't to end for a significant period of time.
They were very much marketed in those early days through clubs, in particular through gay clubs. If you look back at the Take That pictures from the early 90s, they are so camp. You know, it's all baby lotion and satin shorts. You know, it doesn't leave much to the imagination, and that's how they built up their fan base initially.
I think Nigel was very honest about it. He knew that the people who were going to buy pop records were young girls and gay men. And he certainly managed to target them in about 91, 92. What happened in 93, 94 is it moved into a whole different area and that everyone liked them. When you sell 1 million records, the only thing you can conclude is that now everyone is buying that record. And that was his dream.
Com o sucesso da banda, eles ficaram cada vez mais famosos. A naturalidade deles, combinada com a fórmula da gravadora, deu certo. Tanto o público quanto a mídia queriam saber mais de Take That. E Nigel Martin Smith sabia exatamente como satisfazer a fome de ambos.
What was quite clever about the way Take That were marketed at the time was Nigel Martin Smith would take them out of the country on promotional tours just before they were releasing a single to create a kind of media vacuum.
What he did is he bottled it all up to explode just before the next tour or the next big thing, whether it would be a single, whether it be an album, whether it be the next concert, whether it be the tour, or they'd signed some huge deal in a merchandising capacity.
And that left people wanting more and more of the band. So when they were releasing a single, the hype was absolutely unbelievable. Everyone wanted a piece of Take That.
Com o lançamento do segundo disco, Everything Changes, em 93, eles conseguiram 4 número 1 nas paradas. E o fenômeno Take That estava concluído. Eles estavam no auge da carreira e não havia nada que eles podiam fazer de errado. As fãs adolescentes eram inúmeras e os tabloides os amavam.
There was a big fan base, hysterical, you know, I mean, real pop stuff. And they put up with all that and they go through it all quite enjoyably. I think it's important to them their fans are really responsive.
Girls used to get into dumbwaiters and try and haul their way up to their room. I mean, it was constant barrage of girls desperate.
I remember a couple of the female dancers got verbally attacked when we'd leave gigs all the time. They'd say, I can't believe you were dancing with Howard, you are a BBB.
There would be screaming crowds of young girls throwing their knickers in the air at them. It was that big.
Hysteria. All out hysteria. I saw fainting, I saw girls that I thought I saw ambulances. You know, girls were collapsing.
When you came backstage, they'd be waiting around. They just wanted to see the guys and just to touch their tour bus and seeing it firsthand. Absolutely mad.
Nigel Martin Smith continuava a manter os rapazes sob um rígido controle e aproveitou que não existiam colunas de fofocas nas revistas nos anos 90, o que protegeu a banda de escândalos. As revistas de adolescentes estavam saturadas com fotos da banda e Nigel fazia parecer que o sonho de toda garota estava ao seu alcance.
He wanted them to maintain the fiction that they were all single, that they were all like mannequins without genitals, you know. I mean, they were sleeping with girls after concerts in hotels and stuff. They were just a bit choosier about who they did it with.
They would have to be very carefully vetted, or everything would have to be very carefully considered to see whether they would actually kind of try and sell their story to the tabloids. I think it's testament to Nigel Martin Smith's management style, the fact that actually not many kiss and tell stories did come out about the band.
Take That estava no auge, vivendo o sonho do pop. A relação pública deles era perfeita, os protegia dos tabloides e atraía fãs. O que podia dar errado?
Imagine your lifestyle changing so drastically from living in some hole of a mess up north. And suddenly, you know, you're at the Dorchester, you're on this show, and you've got 500 girls running down the road just because you want to go and buy, you know, an ice lolly. You're being screamed at. I mean, your life doesn't become your own anymore. And it is fun, you know, but it all does go pear-shaped, which is exactly what happened.
À medida que Take That ficava mais famoso, os egos na banda brigavam por espaço. O estilo de administração de Nigel estava começando a pesar sobre a banda. e para Robbie estava se tornando insuportável.
Nigel Martin Smith said to the band, you know, one day you'll hate me, and I think probably by the end of Take That they all did. None more so than Robbie, who felt he was bullied by Nigel Martin Smith. He was like the bullying boss, and I think Robbie needed to break away from that. And it wasn't just that, it was also the kind of intense pressure of being in a band. I think he wanted to discover his individuality.
Every so often we saw a glimpse of the real Robbie because, you know, he'd get into some kind of embarrassing situation or he'd get into trouble for something or other. Very minor instances, but these were revealing glimpses of Robbie Williams, and I think people rather liked that.
You know, there was the key warning signs. He started hanging around with a different group of people. I think he called his mates the Diamond Dogs or something, and turned up famously once to rehearsals with his new mates. And I think the other members of the band at that point knew, you know, our days are numbered.
He wanted more credibility, if you like. That's how he saw it at the time anyway, which is why he wanted to be seen with Oasis. You know, he famously went to Glastonbury, you know, and then had bleached blonde hair, looked a bit ridiculous.
I think people started to see things going a bit wrong for Robbie well before he left the band. He was wanting to have more of a say, he was more unreliable in interviews, everything was just getting a little bit more erratic. I don't think anyone foresaw the fact he would actually leave the band. I mean, people just didn't do that in those days.
O comportamento de Robbie foi se deteriorando e em pouco tempo tinha atingido ponto de ebulição. Durante os ensaios para a turnê de 95 Nobody Else, ele anunciou que iria deixar o grupo. Com medo que Robbie fizesse mais alarde, Nigel insistiu que se ele fosse deixar o grupo, o teria que fazer imediatamente. A decisão de Robbie estava tomada e a história fez manchete em todos os jornais.
When Robbie split, it was in the days before, you know, the showbiz celebrity coverage really exploded. And yet I remember either on the front cover or at least on, you know, page 2 or 3 of the Mirror, I remember the picture really well. It was a picture of Robbie kind of running out through a door really dramatically, and it just said, Robbie quits. This is back in like the mid-90s when showbiz stories were consigned to showbiz pages and it didn't really make big news. And yet, that was almost the first time that it did transcend the world of showbiz and become almost a front page story. It was such a big deal.
A seguir, o sonho de Take That se acaba. E Garry e Robbie brigam pelas manchetes e pelas paradas.
We don't know what's gone on behind the scenes. We don't really know. But I think it's the old secret in most relationships. Jealousy.
Nos 5 anos que ficaram juntos, Take That vendeu mais de 25 milhões de discos e teve 8 sucessos consecutivos no topo das paradas. Mas a dinâmica do grupo era frágil e a decisão de Robbie de sair e fazer carreira solo foi um desastre.
I think what happened when Robbie split from the rest of the group was an interesting period, and, you know, for Robbie this was kind of, you know, onto new horizons, very exciting time. And the band, I think, felt a bit bitter, or you at least got the impression that they felt really sad. They weren't ready to end yet. They were still sort of having their moment. And actually, when Robbie left, despite their kind of initial attempts to carry on going, it kind of ripped the soul out of them.
Of course, you know, that was the end of Take That, really, to be fair. They brought out 1 or 2 more singles, I think, after that, and that was it. Time to, and when they announced their official, I mean, the world cried. Fans around the world just sobbing with tears because Take That would Take That.
Unfortunately, the rumours are true. How Deep Is Your Love is going to be our last single together, and The Greatest Hits is going to be our last album. And from today, there's no more.
A reação foi chocante e a divulgação da separação pela mídia fez ela ser notícia em todo o país. Os fãs não acreditavam que nunca mais veriam seus ídolos.
In those days, frivolity and showbiz wasn't something that you would get on the national news now. I mean, we're far more used to celebrity culture permeating into news events. But at the time, that was kind of unprecedented, and there was actually a helpline set up for girls who didn't think they could carry on with life after Take That had announced it was all over.
We weren't quite ready for Take That to end yet. We love them and we wanted to see them go on to greater success, and I think that was why the news was received with such mass impact, because the world still wanted Take That.
It was like an bereavement in the family when Take That split up. People thought there'd been a death in the family, and there were kids kind of crying on the streets because the end of Take That was a complete disaster for many.
Listen, everybody, there's more to come, but not from Take That, so watch out.
If anybody's got any jobs, please give us a ring. My phone number is 01671 Please give us a ring. Thank you.
Depois que a poeira assentou, começou a rixa entre Garry Barlow e Robbie Williams para se lançarem como artistas solo. Ambos queriam aproveitar a publicidade gerada pela separação e brigavam para ver quem os fãs do Take That iriam seguir.
The problem for Robbie in Take That was that Garry was the main creative influence within the group. Nobody was interested in what Robbie had to say or do. They just wanted him to go on stage, know the dance movements, sing one or two songs that had been earmarked for him, and that was it. You know, it was Garry's show. It was always widely assumed at this time that Garry Barlow would be a major superstar. He was groomed for it all the time. So they didn't want Robbie stealing his thunder.
The major falling out was Barlow and Williams. I think that that was a case of real, not just creative conflict, but a conflict of personalities. Barlow was, at that point, remember, touted as the next George Michael. Of course, that didn't happen. It created a lot of publicity, which was good for both halves, really. And, you know, big rock and roll rows are never bad news.
Tanto Robbie quanto Garry estavam amargurados com a forma como eles tinham deixado a banda. Ambos lidaram com isto de maneiras muito distintas. Garry usou sua imagem de pai de família para fazer sucesso no mercado americano e Robbie fez o contrário. Sujou sua imagem e começou uma viagem muito pública nas bebidas e nas drogas.
What Robbie successfully did when Take That split was he took the successful cooler elements of Take That, the things that people wanted to see Take That go on to do, and ran with it, whereas Garry perhaps took the cheesier, more stage managed, more boring bits possibly of Take That and ran with that, and it didn't work out for him. I think you know, he went over to America and began kind of compulsive eating. He took on 4 stone since he left the band, and it was only his wife who kind of put the brakes on and took him home to Chester and put him in a dark room for a few years.
The feud between Garry Barlow and Robbie Williams was absolutely brilliant for Robbie Williams, absolutely hopeless for Garry Barlow. Robbie was full of life. He was full of good copy, if you like. He was full of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Garry Barlow was taking tennis lessons. As a result of this, you know, when there was an interview, Robbie Williams would be interviewed about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and Garry Barlow would be interviewed about Robbie Williams.
Garry tentou ganhar de Robbie no jogo da mídia e tentava atiçar jornalistas com a fortuna que tinha feito, ou mostrar as fraquezas de Robbie, dizendo que se preocupava, que ele estaria à beira de um suicídio. De qualquer maneira, Garry não conseguia competir e a imprensa seguiu as notícias do estilo de vida hedonístico de Robbie enquanto ria das piadas dele sobre o talento de Garry como compositor.
As a journalist, you want people to say the most outrageous things. You want people to fall over drunk in public, and you want people to conduct feuds with other celebrities, because like that's what fills your pages. You don't particularly want somebody who just is reticent and says, do you know what, you know, I want to keep my opinion to myself, which is kind of what Garry does.
Robbie has a personality that is very attractive to the media. He is a lad, but he's vulnerable. And the two together are really golden in terms of making articles, you know, spring to life.
He was quite prepared to share everything with the media. So every night he went out and got drunk, we knew about it. If he pulled a woman, we knew about it. If he was followed by a man, we knew about that too. We even knew what kind of underwear he wore, you know, and, you know, who he upset. Robbie Williams was quite prepared to enter into that kind of deal with the media.
À medida que Robbie ficava mais sofisticado na sua maneira de lidar com a mídia, o público estava achando difícil ignorar as suas mensagens. Robbie estava usando a mídia para chegar aos fãs e queria controlar a forma como era mostrado na imprensa. Ele buscava a atenção dos tabloides, mas sempre da sua maneira.
I remember writing a story when I worked for The Sun about Robbie behaving badly, I think, at an airport, and he actually rang the newspaper office, and I spoke to him on the phone saying, you know, this isn't true, this wasn't me at all, and, you know, the whole thing made a great column the next day. You know, it was Robbie, he cares that much that he wants to set the record straight, and that kind of worked for that period of time in the late 90s where, you know, there was a gap in the market for that.
Robbie's press training came in the UK, and he kind of was the, really a lot of the beginning of the modern day celebrities relate to the press. You know, wearing t-shirts with rude slogans on them and giving the finger to paparazzi, things that celebrities do all the time now. But back then it was really Robbie who kind of pioneered all that kind of rebel image. I don't think he really knows another way to be.
Logo depois de sair do grupo, Robbie lançou seu primeiro single, um cover da canção de George Michael, Freedom. A canção chegou ao número 2 nas paradas e Robbie diz que foi um grito de liberdade das garras de Nigel Martin Smith.
Let me go! Free Robbie Williams! Free Robbie Williams!
I think it says that he understands the game. I think he understands that he's being used, and I think he understands that he's going to get by. He'll use as much as he can as well.
Robbie Williams was natural for the culture that was developing in the late 90s. We, the fans, the audience, the consumers, demanded a lot more of celebrities. I don't think we were any longer prepared to put up with 4 guys on stage who were remote and a little bit too perfect to be like us. I think we were starting to warm to the kind of celebrities who, you know, emerged dishevelled from a night on the tiles, looking exactly what they were, rough. And Robbie Williams was quite prepared to do all that. And whether it was his instinct or not, I don't know, but it was exactly right for the times. Take That was suddenly looking very much early 90s.
Robbie quase não tinha limites para atrair a atenção da imprensa. Ele tinha aprendido a lição de Nigel Martin Smith de sempre estar disponível para os fãs. E para Robbie brincar com a sexualidade era fácil.
Robbie did not want to alienate his gay following, and I think he kind of teased people with the suggestion that maybe he was, maybe he wasn't.
Robbie likes to flirt and make his sexuality ambiguous, but then doesn't like anyone else speculating on it. I mean, he brings this into the public arena and then says, look, no, you lot can't talk about it now.
Well, no one could kind of work out what was going on in his head, and there was all sorts of rumours and speculations. But in and amongst this, he was producing these amazing records that were just going to the top of the charts, and so it was this kind of combination of still being there musically but also just having the most fascinating personality that the media were just obsessed by him.
Para desfazer os boatos de que era gay, Robbie também se fez fotografar com várias mulheres famosas. Ele queria se manter no centro da atenção, manter o mistério.
He's either out at clubs pulling women by the trailer park load, you know, or am I gay? You know, did I say I was gay? Oh, I'm not. And, you know, women saying, oh, yes, I slept with Robbie, but we didn't do anything. I think there's this permanent veil drawn over him.
For someone like Robbie Williams, it's important for him to continue to keep appearing in the media. So when he got to LA, he was pictured with a whole kind of string of women, including Rachel Hunter. I think he went out with Jerry Halliwell for a while. You know, it kept the intrigue going. It kept us buying those celebrity magazines every week, and it kept us interested in Robbie.
Is it another PR stunt that Robbie's with a girl? You know, people have always claimed, and there's been a lot of allegations about Robbie's sexuality, straight or gay. And I think that that's another huge wrestle. I think Robbie wrestles with everything in his life.
A carreira de Robbie como artista solo deslanchou com o lançamento de Angels em 97. O single logo lhe deu status de deus do rock, deixando Garry Barlow para trás e fazendo os outros integrantes do Take That parecerem uma lembrança distante. Enquanto Robbie se divertia com sua nova fama, os outros membros do Take That estavam achando viver fora dos holofotes mais difícil do que o imaginado. Sem os rigorosos treinamentos para lidar com a mídia, eles estavam fora do circuito da imprensa e sozinhos.
I mean, they were here, massive, and then, whew, gone. Completely gone. Like, you're walking down the street, Would you recognise him?
I remember seeing Had in my days when I worked at Radio 1. I remember Had just being a club DJ. I felt so sorry for him. I really did, you know. You wouldn't take that, for God's sake. What are you doing in a little club with 300 people DJing when you're getting 250 quid for it, you know? Oh, that must kill you.
Mark Owen was on that spiral as well after Take That split up. In fact, he couldn't get a job anywhere. I saw him out on several occasions and he was a shocker. I mean, you know, it was don't you know who I am? Well, I'm telling you, no one knew who he was. It was quite funny. A generation had moved on.
Howard said he kind of contemplated suicide and considered at one point jumping in the Thames. And Jason went off, kind of educated himself. He's quite a serious guy in actual fact. And when you talk to him, he always kind of talks about things in great seriousness, and you get the impression that he thinks everything through. Travelled the world and kind of found himself a little bit.
When you've had someone tell you day in, day out for years what time you have to be somewhere, what you have to say, what you definitely should wear, what you definitely shouldn't wear, who you should and shouldn't date, or who at least people should know you are or aren't dating, and then all of a sudden you have none of that there must be a real big gap in your life in terms of who regulates that now. I think that's why for a long time we saw the guys, not only these guys, but I think most people in that environment kind of just having this sort of limbo stage of not knowing where they want to be, of not knowing what they want to do, of trying very different things until they come back to a semblance of normality and begin to self-regulate again.
Para Garry foi difícil deixar a fama e havia esperança dele lançar uma carreira solo nos Estados Unidos. Depois de vários fracassos e péssimas vendas dos seus discos, ele foi despedido pela gravadora. Em 2002, ele fechou seu site e trabalhou como compositor para outros artistas. Enquanto isto, Robbie tinha assinado contrato com a EMI de 80 milhões de libras.
They loved his voice, they loved him part of Take That, but when he became a solo singer, he didn't have the charisma or power of Robbie Williams. Albeit he had a great voice, a great persona, was very endearing. Ultimately, as a person, as an individual, he wasn't as strong as Robbie.
Want to know what kind of impact Garry Barlow had in the U.S.? He was the other dude from Take That. That's what kind of impact Garry Barlow had in the U.S. I don't know who he is.
Garry Barlow as a success is quite staggering. People forget that. They think he's failed as a solo singer, but don't know as a songwriter he's one of the most respected in the world. Delta Goodrich, one of the biggest artists in the world 2 years ago, Garry Barlow wrote for Charlotte Church. Garry Barlow has written songs that have sold millions and millions of copies for other artists.
Ainda desejoso de fama, Mark também tentou fazer carreira solo, mas sua tentativa de ressurgir como artista indie não foi bem recebida pelos fãs. Só depois de aparecer em Celebrity Big Brother em 2002, 6 anos depois da banda se separar, que sentimos mais uma vez carinho por ele e nos lembramos do que estava faltando.
He came over as extremely likeable, extremely normal, not too much of a goody-goody, the sort of person who would muck in with other people. And you could actually see why he was a very popular member of Take That and actually managed to hold it together and hold the warring factions together as well.
The secret of the success of a good boy band is when people care for each individual component, and I think that Mark proved that it wasn't just about Robbie and it wasn't just about Garry, it was about, you know, people loving each member of the band, and I think we were left really hankering for more.
A seguir, o público se cansa das manobras de Robbie.
It can be big highs and big lows, and I think people kind of grow tired in the industry of that kind of behaviour.
E a sobrevivência do mais fraco. Take That ressurge das cinzas.
Until they looked around the curtain on the first concert and saw the place was full, they didn't really know whether it was going to take or not.
Já foram uma boy band de muito sucesso, mas foram vítimas da natureza frágil da fama e voltaram para a obscuridade. O que há de novo com a volta de Take That? Depois do triunfo de Mark em Celebrity Big Brother, uma paixão nacional por Take That parecia tomar conta do público. Em 2003, a revista Smash Hit elegeu Take That a melhor banda da história da Inglaterra. Eles tinham aparecido em 23 capas da revista, mais do que qualquer outra banda.
It's amazing, actually, the success of putting a boy band on a Smash Hits cover. It's the difference between you selling twice as much magazines as if you put, you know, a female band on the cover of the magazine. And Take That were really the pinnacle of that. There was no other band that could shift copies like Take That.
What used to happen with a magazine is you would put one artist on the cover and then that artist wouldn't appear on the cover again for quite a few months or weeks. With Take That, you could put a different band member on the cover every week and your sales would be going through the roof week after week after after week.
O ressurgimento e o interesse por Take That não passou despercebido por Nigel Martin Smith e logo a separação faria 10 anos. Para marcar a ocasião, a banda compilou o disco Ultimate Collection e Nigel Martin Smith os convenceu a fazer um documentário sobre a vida deles com Take That. 6 milhões de pessoas viram o programa, que reacendeu a chama pela boy band favorita da Inglaterra.
It was just unbelievable, the response to that documentary. I mean, the people that watched it, the Sun ran a campaign to Take That back together, and just a couple of weeks later it was announced they were going to be touring again for the first time in 10 years. As a four-piece, admittedly, but there was still the speculation of whether Robbie would be there or not. And I think it was a lot of people's dream come true at that time. It was amazing, you know, Take That back together.
The thing that really struck the journalists on the night of the launch was that A, Robbie was not there, even though there'd been speculation he would be, and B, on the tape, you saw all the other guys having what is now a really good quality life. Garry Barlow surrounded by children at his piano, Howard joking, Jason laughing, and there was no Robbie. And it cut then from a scene of Garry and his little blonde children and his lovely wife and his mansion to Robbie sitting on his own on a stool and talking about how much he hated his management company and how alone he felt. And there's no doubt that the editing of that was deliberate.
O apetite pela volta de Take That só aumentou com a queda de popularidade de Robbie, tanto nos Estados Unidos quanto na Inglaterra. Enquanto o disco Ultimate Collection foi disco de platina, os trabalhos de Robbie recebiam críticas diferentes. As tentativas de Robbie de conseguir mais publicidade estavam cansando e o público já não queria ouvir seus lamentos de como a vida era difícil.
I think it was interesting that when Take That announced their reformation at the Brits, it was the same day that Robbie decided via a press release to announce that he'd gone back into rehab. Only this time, nobody took it seriously. He's a very rich man living a very charmed life, and I think it's difficult to feel sympathy for Robbie Williams anymore.
As he said in his own album, he lived his life through a lens. And I think that's Robbie Williams. He kind of, on the one hand, publicity and fame is his fuel. On the other hand, it's his downfall. It's ironic with someone like Robbie Williams. Without fame, he's nothing. But fame made him ill.
A promessa de novo Take That era muito tentadora e o público começou a torcer pelo sucesso. A banda ansiava por uma segunda chance, mas eles sabiam que só iriam dar certo se trabalhassem como uma unidade democrática e que este homem, o empresário Nigel Martin Smith, precisava cair fora.
The fact that he was thrown off the tour when he'd been sort of part of putting the band back together again is just kind of really a bit sad. Mark Owen said he was surplus to their needs, he just wasn't needed anymore. Others have said that maybe it's because they knew Robbie would never come back and perform with them again if Nigel was going to be part of it. So I think there was probably several reasons why they did it, but I don't think we'll ever really know the truth.
I'm never one for predictions, but I think the best Take That show to date is going to be. That's my tip.
Most amazing things about the band being back together is that they now all have songwriting credits. I think on the last album, 11 out of the 12 songs were co-written by the band all together. But I think it was very important for the band to have those co-writing credits because, of course, then the royalties are shared out jointly.
Maybe Garry's thought, actually, I know it's me who's writing the hits, but I know these songs are nothing and would be nowhere near as successful if it wasn't just for the presence of you guys singing, being on stage with me and dancing. Plus, they're old mates as well, so it's nice to spread it around.
With them, you felt they've still got something to prove. There's this sort of last chapter to them, and that's why they've done well. It's not about the money. I mean, undoubtedly that is a part of it, and they're doing all right from it. But you felt they really wanted to do something professionally, and they've really got their heart and their soul in it.
They could, go on stage and just busk it. They could go on stage and turn out